Welcome to Behind the Doors, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of residential real estate investing. I'm your host, Dan Noma Jr., here with my co-host, Marvin Cruz.
We're here to help you unlock the best strategies and practice for investors. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro looking to scale your portfolio.
We've spent decades navigating the ever-changing world of real estate, and now we're sharing everything we've learned to help you succeed.
From off-market deals to cash flow management and everything in between, we'll break it down and bring you actionable insights that can make a real difference in your investments.
So get ready to open the door to new opportunities and take your real estate investing to the next level. Let's dive in.
All right, Dan, welcome back, my man.
We are back, man.
We are back and
Another
get
guest.
Weready.
We're on a roll with the guests too, by the way.
I love having guests.
Yeah.
I like when they sit right here in between us.
We should always have a
awkward.
guest. We should always have a guest.
Only a little awkward.
Yeah. We should always have a guest
sandwich.
if we
All right,
can.
thanks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm excited because today we get to dive into tax deferral and all that wizardry, right?
That really excites you?
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Anytime we can teach people, it excites me, believe it or not. Yeah. You need to listen to our podcast. So everyone's heard the term 1031 exchange. They probably tossed it around a few times, but what really is it? We're going to dive into that today with our guest, Stephen Decker.
Yeah.
All right. So in its simplest sense, it's basically the government just dangling a carrot in front of your face, right? Nobody likes to give the government more taxes than they already give them.
Nope.
So 1031 in its simplest sense is it's just this section of the tax code that allows you to defer paying capital gains tax and state income tax and depreciation recapture anytime you sell a piece of investment real estate, as long as you go stimulate the real estate economy, as long as you go buy bigger, better performing assets, right? So if I sold a property for $1 million and I go buy something for $1 million or higher, the government says, thank you very much. Will allow you to defer paying those capital gains tax. Now, every now and then somebody, if you couldn't tell, for those of you that are watching, I'm Irish, so I like to sit up at the bar every now and then, and when somebody sits down next to me and they say, well, what do you do for a living? It's like, good luck explaining what a qualified intermediary is or a 1031 exchange is. And so normally I just tell people that I'm in real estate, and I hope that they kind of piss off at that point. But if they don't, if they really kind of press me on it and they say, okay, well, what is a 1031? I take out a $1 bill, I hand it to them, and I say, give me 4 quarters. That's all you did with the 1031. You just changed your paper bill into 4 quarters. You still have $1. Same thing with real estate. You sold your triplex, you went out and bought 2 duplexes. Same kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a powerful tool, though, right? Like, I mean, I know we're kidding about it, but I mean, for real estate investors out there, that if you're in real estate and if you're in real estate investment to build long-term wealth, which is like, that's the game that I think all of us play, at least. I think there are people that get into real estate and they want like the fast cash, right? Yeah. That's not really what we're talking about, right? What we're talking about is building long-term wealth in real estate, a 1031 exchange. Because, if I was going to like dumb it down or simplify it a little bit, like if you sell a piece of real estate and you pay the taxes, okay, and you did that every single time, you're really just working for the government because you're making 40% at least of the money that you've made on that investment is going to go to Uncle Sam.
Right.
What the 1031 allows you to do is to keep that 40% and just continue reinvesting, right? So at some point, maybe it's not even you, someone down the road with your wealth portfolio is going to pay the tax somewhere. But hopefully it's on some massive piece of real estate where that number just doesn't matter. Right. It's just
your analogies are a really good one, and it's one that it reminds me of an actually interesting thing that happened to me in a presentation I was giving one time. This was probably back like 2012 when I was still a little bit more tactful in my career, and I was doing a presentation in a residential real estate office in Southern California, actually. And like in the middle of my class, this little old lady stands up and tells me that she hates 1031 exchanges. And I, of course, I look at her kind of quizzically and I'm like, well, thank you for coming. But I said, explain yourself. I said, well, why is that? And she said, because I'd rather pay my taxes as I go. I don't want to get to 90 years old and own a building like this and sell it and have to pay all of my back taxes going back to my initial investment that I made back in like 1970. Right. And I said, okay, so let me get this straight. You buy a piece of real estate, it goes up in value, then you sell it, you pay the taxes, so now you're back down here and you take what's left over and you put it back into real estate? And she said, yes. And I said, you're nuts. Yeah. And she said, well, why is that nuts? I said, I'm going to give you a real simple example. Like, let's say you buy a property for $1, right? And you sell it for $100,000. So the moral of the story is you're profiting $100,000, right? Yeah. after you've paid taxes on that $100,000, to your point, you're going to be left with about $60,000, right? Yeah. If you take that $60,000, put it as 20% down on a property, you could buy yourself a $300,000 property. Yeah. But if you had done a 1031 exchange, the government lets you keep the full $100,000. You put that as 20% down on a property, you could buy yourself a $500,000 property. So not only did you increase your net worth by a couple $100,000, but you also, preserved all that tax base. You get a greater interest deduction on the bigger property. You're generating more cash flow on that bigger property. And I said, look, I got to be honest with you. If you'd done that throughout your lifetime, you wouldn't care about being 90 years old and selling a building like this because you'd own 4 of them instead of just the one.
Right.
And you kind of see like 40 years of investing regret wash over her face at that point. But that's kind of the thing. And now there is one little caveat though to what you mentioned. There is truly one way to completely screw over the government and avoid taxes, and that's the way that nobody wants to go, but we're all going to go at one point, and that's to die. Yeah. A lot of our customers do use 1031 for estate planning. It's a great way to set up the kids, the grandkids, the nieces and nephews. You want to leave your real estate to me, that's perfectly fine as well. Because as the tax code's currently constructed, if you hold on to your real estate until the day you die, and this goes for any real estate, it could be your primary residence, second home, not just investment properties like what we deal with on the 1031 front, but if you hold on to your real estate until the day you die, as the tax code's constructed, when you pass away, the basis gets stepped up to fair market value. Meaning, if I drop dead today and I leave my house to my kids and they decide, we don't like dad's house, we want to sell it, they could turn around and sell it for what today's market value is and pay 0 tax. No federal capital gains, no state income tax, no depreciation recapture. All disappears with me upon death.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It's amazing that, that more people aren't doing that, right? Like, because especially now with like, you can get equity lines against your real estate and different things like that. And so, I think I've always said that, real estate investment's a long-term game. It just is. And, if you can pass those kind of assets down to your family and avoid paying all these taxes, like it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Especially if you're thinking about because a lot of our listeners think about building smaller portfolios and, how to do that. And, maybe we should even get into legal structures of how they should hold these things. But I think where I want to go next is maybe into the timelines of the 1031, because I think that's the question everybody has is, okay, they're going to let me do this, but when I sell it, how does that, where's the clock start and how does the timelines work? Yeah,
so the clock starts ticking on your exchange when you close the property that you're selling. So let's just say, for example, I own this building that we're in today, right? Yep. And I sell it and we close escrow, let's just say July 1st. From my close date on July 1st, the IRS only gives me 45 calendar days to identify property that I want to purchase. And they give me 180 calendar days to actually close on whatever it is that I'm going to purchase. Now, nobody can ever remember 45 or 180. Easiest way to remember that is try to remember 6 and 6. 45 days is about 6 weeks. 180 days is about 6 months. So the government's basically saying, all right, Dan, if you sell this building, you've only got about 6 weeks to go shopping and only got about 6 months to actually close on whatever it is that you're going to buy. Now, the number one thing that my clients like to yell at me about is the fact that they only have 45 days to identify property. Yeah. For some reason, people think that Steve Decker is the jerk that's only given them 45 days to identify their property. I always tell them this time period's been the same since 1984. I was 3 years old. Right. I had nothing to do with it. Yeah. But the reason that clock is so short is because bluntly, the IRS wants you to either fail and pay your taxes, or they want you to immediately reinvest your money. The last thing the government ever wants you to do is sit stagnant with your money. They don't want you to sit on the sidelines. They want you in the game in one form or another. Yeah. And if you think about it logically, if you complete a successful 1031, that actually does generate significant tax revenue for the government as well. Because if I sell a property for $1 million and I go buy something for $1.5 million, well, number one, I'm paying higher property taxes than I was on my previous property, which the local government likes. Number two, I paid transfer tax in most states. And number three, I'm probably generating more income on a $1.5 million property than I was on a $1 million property, which means I'm paying more income tax. Not to mention, the real estate agent made a commission, which got tax, title, escrow, 1031, paint guy, carpet guy, lender, appraiser, inspector, all of the hands that are in any real estate transaction. All of that money gets taxed in one form or another. So tremendous tax revenue does actually generate from a successful 1031. Yeah. But the government just doesn't want you to sit with your money on the sidelines. They want you to either put it to good use or fail and pay your taxes. Yeah. So
I don't know if I've ever thought about it that way, right? Like that's a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah. When should they engage with someone like IPX 1031?
So there's when do you have to and when should you,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
There is a differentiation. So you have to engage a company like us. We are what's called a qualified intermediary. Basically, we're the neutral third party that has to properly paper trail the 1031 exchange, and we also have to hold your money in between the time you sell property A and go out and buy property B. So you have to engage us before you close the property that you're selling. So if you're selling this building and you're going to close escrow tomorrow, you could call me up today and say, hey, Steve, I need to do this. And now I'm not going to like you very much if you wait until the very last minute to get the exchange set up, but we can still do that for you. When should you? I always tell my real estate agents and my industry professionals, bring us into the fold as early as possible, because we've got tips and tricks that we can kind of give you ideas on how to make this transaction a much smoother process. Because that time clock is really short. I mean, I was sitting with a customer recently, and they were panicking about, when should I list my property? And then once I list my property and we close, and I'm under the gun of only 45 days to identify, and I want to go buy a property across the country. I said, well, you should already engage a real estate agent in the area that you're looking in. You're looking to buy in the boondocks of North Carolina. Do you have a real estate agent out there? Well, no. Right. Do you know what kind of property you want in that neighborhood? No. Do you know what price point you'll get with the money that you're getting from the property you're selling? No. I said, those are the things you got to have those answers ahead of time, so that once that clock starts ticking, you're not in a panic mode, right? Nobody wants to feel forced to buy a piece of real estate. It's a massive investment. You don't want to be under the gun to have to do that at the last minute. But in some cases, clients will do that because it's either that or I pay Uncle Sam a boatload of taxes. Right. So those timelines are pretty crucial.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I was in production as an agent, when I would sell somebody's investment property and they didn't set it up in advance, then they would call their accountant and go, hey, I sold this property. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the accountant's scrambling to try to get a hold of somebody in 1031 after. And I'm going, I told you about this from the get-go. You just didn't realize how expensive it was going to be when you sold it, know? So
we kind of joke at our company, the worst time of our year is January 1 to April 15th. Why? Because that's tax filing season. And we get all these phone calls from people that say, hey, Steve, I sold my triplex last year. I just did my 2025 taxes, and my CPA tells me I owe $300,000 in taxes. He asked me why I didn't do a 1031 exchange, and I Googled 1031, and I'm calling you. And the first question they always ask is, can I still do it? And the answer is no. But the second question they almost always ask is, well, why didn't my real estate agent tell me about an exchange? And I always say there's no easy answer that I can give you other than you chose the wrong real estate agent. So, it's just, we just need to educate our customers out there in the market. A lot of people, what I call casual investors, for the most part, don't even know that 1031 exchanges exist, even though they've been in the tax code for over 100 years now. So, but to your point, it's a massively powerful tool.
Well, I mean, there's a significant percentage of landlords or people that own investment real estate that are landlords by default. They maybe inherited the property or they couldn't sell it and therefore it became an investment property, right? So not every landlord is seeking out the real estate that they own.
Yeah, a lot of them aren't seeking it out, but then when they sell and they get that massive tax bill, they're maybe I should have stayed in real estate.
Yeah, they're like, wait a minute, I saw these real estate guys. They don't look like they're paying this kind of tax. Well, they're not.
They're not.
They're not. What about this like-kind scenario, right? Can you describe that?
Yeah, so there's a common misconception in 1031 exchanges that you have to buy and sell properties that are the exact same property type.
Single-family house for a single-family house, or a piece of land for a piece of land.
Because the IRS says that you have to sell and buy properties that are considered what they call like-kind to one another. And like-kind trips up my clients a lot of times. They think, if I sold a triplex, I've got to buy a triplex. If I sell an office building, I've got to buy an office building. But right now, I don't want to own an office. I want to sell my office building, and I want to buy single-family rentals. Right. Like-kind is actually a lot more broad than you may realize. It basically means the property that you sell and buy, they either have to be held for investment or in the productive use of your business or trade. So you can go from residential to commercial assets or vice versa. You can switch the property types. You could sell a triplex and buy 3 townhouses if you wanted to. You could sell a townhouse and go buy a piece of vacant land. You could sell an office building and go buy, industrial or retail, or if you wanted to get into residential investment properties. All of that is perfectly fine. And then there's some weird things that you can buy and sell that a lot of people don't realize. Things like cell towers, those god-awful things on the side of the freeway.
Yeah.
They always try to make it look like a tree, but it never really looks like a tree. That's a cell tower. If you want to exchange your single-family home and go buy a cell tower, you can do it. Billboards, windmills, air rights, water rights, oil, gas, and mineral rights, boat docks, moorings, cemetery plots if you're a real sick SOB.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of diversity with regard to what you can buy and sell. And you can also switch geographical locations. That's another one that people don't realize. They think if I sell Arizona, I've got to buy Arizona. Or if I sold in Maine, I've got to buy in Maine. Absolutely not true. You got to stay within the United States. If you sell U.S. real estate, you've got to buy U.S. real estate. But you can also buy in Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands as well. So yeah, you can move about the country really as you see fit. And we've seen a lot of that. We saw a lot of it, particularly during the pandemic years. People got out of the higher state income tax states and they moved to the Nevadas, the Tennessees, the Texases, the Floridas, the states with no state income tax. And then they realized, well, man, I moved from Oregon or Hawaii or California or New York, one of these high income tax states. And I still own some rental properties back there, but now I don't want to be a property manager from 2,000 miles away. Yeah. So they sell that and they move those assets into the state in which they reside. Yeah. So yeah, the ability to move around is a big benefit to 1031.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So what about what are the more common mistakes that you see people make when they're doing a 1031? I mean, obviously probably tripping up the timeline.
The most common, and I if you guys couldn't tell by now, I'm a little bit sarcastic, right? The most common is people go on vacation during the middle of their exchange, right? They sell their property,
sell their house,
they go on vacation to Spain for a month, they come back, and they're like, oh, hey, Steve, my 45th day is on Sunday. I'm going out with my agent on Saturday to look at properties. Do you have any bright ideas? And I say, yeah, I've got a great idea. Build a time machine, get in the time machine, and go back in time about 2 months ago and start shopping for property. So that is, not realizing how crucial those timelines are. And those timelines are not flexible. Like a lot of times people say, oh, well, no
filing extension or anything like that.
The only time the IRS extends those timelines is military deployment. So you'd have to enlist and get deployed overseas, not even enough to just enlist. Or in the case of federally declared disaster, like earthquake, fire, flood, tornado, hurricane, act of terrorism, global pandemic for 3 months in 2020. But yeah, I mean, that is probably the number one mistake. People aren't serious enough about it. It blows my mind also how few people actually talk to their CPA or their financial advisor before they make one of the biggest financial moves of their entire life. Right? Yeah. A lot of times people sell their real estate and they don't take it seriously. It's, I'm gonna make a boatload of money, and then they don't realize, oh wait, now I've got to get my backside in gear and go locate property. Yeah. So that's really probably the biggest mistake that people make. Yeah. Some of the other no-nos: don't buy from a related party. You don't want to buy from your kids, your grandkids. You don't want to buy from your parents or your sisters or brothers. It needs to be really an arm's length transaction. That's one that we see quite a bit. I want to buy my sister's house. Don't do that through your 1031. There's a high likelihood that gets overturned in an audit. Yeah. So yeah. So those are the biggest, most common mistakes that people make.
Right. Yeah. The other one is I've heard people that will say that they want to buy a property and then let their kids go rent it. Mm-hmm. Right, that becomes like another one, and it's like,
doesn't work like that. Huh?
You can do it, but your CPA is going to want two things: fair market rent from the kid, and report the income on your taxes. Right. And 9 times out of 10, it's little Timmy's going to college at U of A. I'm going to buy a condo right next to U of A, so little Timmy can live there. And it's like, okay, well, is little Timmy going to pay you fair market rent? Right. No, he's a full-time student. Okay, well then that's not a good idea. Yeah.
We're going to have a little problem.
I mean, if you want to roll the dice on it, it's what I call audit roulette. If your number gets pulled, you're probably SOL, but that's between you and your CPA.
We're not going to advise this.
Yeah, we're not going to advise on that. I always joke I am orange. I don't look good in orange jumpsuits, so I'm not committing federal tax fraud on your behalf. So,
given that is the number one thing is time. What do you do? Do you have resources that you refer them to move that money?
So time.
That was the setup question.
The setup question. I figured that would be a pretty good setup. So there's this company that I've heard of this one time many years ago called Easy Street Offers. But that is a big benefit for our customers. Our customers. A lot of times our clients, they go into things well-intentioned, they shop, they've got a particular market in mind, but they have a hard time broadening their perspective. They want a specific property in a specific neighborhood, and then they're on day 43 of their 45 days, and they call me in a panic and say, okay, Steve, I've seen everything on the market that meets this criteria. Do you have anything else? And that's where you guys really come into the fold for our customers.
Yeah.
Off-market transactions that fit within their buy box that they can, pretty easily slide themselves into. I mean, that's the hero.
Yeah.
You guys are the hero to many of our customers because it helps them, complete their transaction. And nobody wants to give Uncle Sam more taxes, like I said, than they already get. So yeah, that's a big benefit to our customers. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah, one of the things that when we were dreaming our world of product up was, I see a lot of people do with the 1031 is unfortunately, they did a great job on the sale of their asset. But then when they went to go purchase, the 6-week window created this rushing thing where all of a sudden now they bought a less than valued property than they should maybe as a result of time. They let time kind of drive their decision versus letting the best investment surface to the top. And so that was one of the things that we thought a lot about was how do we ensure that they're still making a really good sound investment during that period of time versus just rushing to buy it. Because I've gotten that call too where I've got 2 days. What do you have? Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
Plenty, but.
Right. Yeah, we've got stuff, but it may not be the best stuff, right? Or at this particular moment, you have to identify today.
One of the things that really impressed me when I first met you. It was I'm really kind of taking almost like a commercial real estate approach to residential real estate. I'm really, people get emotional in residential real estate. This isn't 1031 exchanges are not about emotion. It is about deferring tax and improving my position in the real estate economy. And to your point, at one point you showed us a breakdown. Everybody and their mother in this area, everybody thinks Scottsdale's the place to be. Scottsdale's the place to be. But when you're really looking at breaking down the numbers, well, you might be better off owning 2 properties in Tucson than 1 property in Scottsdale.
Yeah.
I mean, the same kind of thing. I live in California. A lot of time, from an appreciation standpoint, you can't go wrong with California real estate. But if you want cash flow, you're not staying in California. Right. You're going to go buy 2 or 3 properties in Arizona. You're going to go buy 5 single-family homes in Alabama. Yeah. You're going to diversify your real estate portfolio if you're really looking to increase that cash flow. Yeah. And so I mean that's what's really impressive about what you guys have going is that deep dive. Hey, look, this is the type of real estate that you really should own instead of the one that you like because it's got great travertine or you like the man cave. It's well, you're not going to live there. Yeah. So what difference does that make? Right. Yeah. Is it going to cash flow? Is it going to appreciate? That's generally the number 1 and number 2 reasons that you find out that people do 1031. Yeah. They think it's the tax benefits, but it's not.
Yeah. I say to people all the time, I'll buy a doghouse. I honestly don't care where it is. If the return is good, I will buy it. I would absolutely buy it. If the return's great, I'm in. Sign me up for that. That's it. That's the non-emotional part.
How many homes have you bought you've never even seen?
A lot.
Most of them.
A lot. Most of them, right? Most. I've been to Nashville a couple times for bachelor parties, but
and that's it.
I've never seen any of the real estate that I own there. That's great. It's been good.
That's great.
What about reverse exchanges?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of reverse 1031 activity, particularly in a market like this. Inventory has picked up a little bit of late, which is nice to see. Still a little bit of a disconnect, I think, between a lot of sellers think property values are still up here, buyers still don't want to pay that, and interest rates are still fairly high. I say fairly because we are spoiled. I mean, from a historical standpoint, our interest rates are fantastic, but in the last 5-10 years, we've been spoiled with incredibly low rates. So a lot of people are looking at reverse exchanges because it is a great solution to the timing, right? Mm-hmm. We've talked about timing. That's really the major hurdle that people have to overcome with exchanges. Reverse exchanges do solve that timing component. So what a reverse exchange is where you actually go out and buy your replacement property first. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to sell this building, but in the meantime, the building across the street is on the market and I want to strike while the iron's hot, I can actually go out, close the building across the street first, and then I've got 180 days to get this property sold and off my books. Mm-hmm. Sounds simple, but it's a far more complex type of transaction. Yeah. You really do have to have an intermediary like us that really does these a lot. I mean, we have an entire division that is solely devoted to reverse exchanges. The reason they're more complex is because the IRS doesn't allow your client to be on title to the property that they are buying while they're still on title to the property that they're selling. So what happens in a reverse exchange is you actually have us, the exchange company. We actually create an LLC and we go on title to that property that the client is going to be purchasing on their behalf. And we hold title to that property until they get their other ones sold. Now, while we're on the title, we do triple net lease the property to the client so they can sublease it out to tenants. They're going to collect rent checks. They're going to pay the property taxes, the insurance, et cetera. We're merely acting as a title holder for purposes of you completing the exchange. The biggest hurdle that comes with reverse exchanges and why everybody and their mother doesn't just do those is where does the money come from, right? A lot of times people need the money from the one that they're selling in order to afford the one that they're going to buy. And sometimes people think that we, the exchange company, are just going to, magnanimously go out and buy that property using our money on behalf of the client. We do not do that. The customer still has to come up with the funds in order to make that purchase. So they'll either need to have the cash to go out and buy all cash, or a lot of times on residential transactions in particular, there'll be a bridge loan.
There you go.
Kind of a higher interest, short-term debt, or private money. So.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months is better than 45 days, but now you're on the other side of the coin, and if your buyer knows that you're doing a reverse exchange, that's where I see it gets dicey. Because they're like, I know you're doing a reverse exchange, and that there's blood in the water now, and I know you've got to sell. And you've got a time limit.
So interestingly, you do have to notify the other party that you're doing a 1031 exchange in writing, but you don't have to specifically say reverse 1031. So just leave that little word reverse out of it. Just say, I'm participating in a 1031 exchange, and there's the solution to that. But if your back's up against a wall, that's where it can get a little bit dicey. And
the savvy negotiator in me is always looking up to see what the other guy's doing all the time. So maybe that's my own trick that I just spilled the beans on, but it's definitely one that I look at. But well, let's think about IPX itself as a business. I mean, you are the biggest qualified intermediary in the world. By far.
By leaps and bounds, we are the largest qualified intermediary. We're owned by the largest provider of title insurance services in the entire world. Our parent company is Fidelity National Financial. Fidelity National Financial owns, Fidelity National Title, Chicago Title, Commonwealth, Lawyers, Ticor, Alamo Title in Texas, Title Guarantee in Hawaii, a whole slew of title insurance companies all over the United States and in fact all over the world. And we're a wholly owned subsidiary of F&F. So as a result of our tremendous efforts, I'd like to think out in the field, but also as a part of being with that massive family of companies, we are in turn the largest qualified intermediary in the country by a lot. Last year we did about 35,000 exchanges, and the pedal is to the metal. I mean, we're probably going to blow by that this year is my guess. So
that's a lot of exchanges.
A lot of dollars and cents moving at any given time. So it's nice.
And you guys provide everything, right? From education to your exchangers and agents that should know more about 1031. To our earlier point.
Absolutely. I mean that's what we do the most probably with our days. We go out and meet people out in the field. We love to present. I mean, when I'm looking to hire somebody new to the sales team, I'm our sales manager on the West Coast, and the first thing I want to know is, can you public speak? Can you get in front of a crowd? Because that's how we get a majority of our business. We're going into residential real estate offices, commercial brokerage offices, law firms, CPA firms, high-end financial firms, et cetera, and just educating. So we can provide those courses for people that need the additional TLC, the additional education.
I think it should be like a question on the state exam about more 1031 for people. I've been saying that for a long time, but it should be also maybe renewal hours or something that agents can grab and take. Should be around 1031, and it's because I think it's just way underserved. Too many agents don't know about it, and too many brokers don't really know much about it either to support their clients enough to talk about it.
It blows my mind when I go into an office and I do a presentation for whatever the office is. It always shocks me how many people that are in real estate for a profession that don't know anything about 1031. What that says to me is the principals themselves, the actual owners of the real estate for the most part have no clue that this even exists. Going back to that example of, it's tax season and we always get those sad phone calls. It breaks my heart, but it happens all the time. And it's, my real estate agent didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Not good.
I mean, it's all you need to know is this much, and hey, call Steve. I mean, that's really all you need to know.
Right. Yeah.
Go call this redheaded dude that I watched on a podcast or listen to on a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, you guys literally take it from, the point of the introduction of the customer all the way through. And it's very processed. They've got it completely dialed in. So, I think, to kind of wrap it up, 1031 is probably one of the most powerful tools in real estate investing for sure. You've been around a long time. What's your best advice to your first-time investor about 1031?
I always tell people go with what you know.
Yeah.
I mean, stick in your local market, right? Don't go, dreaming of properties 3,000 miles away. Stick in your neighborhood. Invest where you are. I find that most of our casual investors, they want to be within driving distance of their investment property, right? They want to be able to drive out to it, see it, smell it, touch it, make sure the tenant's not trashing it. Even my own dad drives me nuts, right? He moved out to the West Coast by way of the Navy during Vietnam, bought himself a little condo in Coronado, now lives in LA. Drives me nuts. The guy every now and then is like, hey, Steve, can you go check out my property? I'm like, Dad, it's, you make it sound like that's just no big deal. It's like, dude, sell that thing and exchange it for something in West LA that you can micromanage, right? So that I don't have to drive down to Coronado and check it out. Yeah. Stick where you're geographically located. That's what I would start with.
Yeah.
Just make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Doors. We hope you found today's insights valuable for your real estate investing journey.
Remember, real estate success doesn't happen overnight, but with the right tools and strategies, you can build long-term wealth and create passive income.
If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with others who are passionate about real estate investing.
Don't forget to follow us on social media for more tips and exclusive content.
Until next time, keep unlocking new opportunities, and we'll see you on the next episode of Behind the Doors.